and welcome to Logan Sounds Off, where I talk about books, music, and a whole lot more. I'm your host, Logan Kelly. Hello and welcome to Logan Sounds Off. For those who don't know you, Johnathan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a science broadcaster for the most part, Logan. I started off doing kids TV in Satitude in RTE, and we did Gunge Tanks and all kids cartoons and all sorts of fun in the mornings, myself and 3 other presenters. And I went from doing that to doing young person's radio. I worked for Spin 1038, and then I went from Spin 1038 to Newstalk, where I do a science program, and I've been doing that for the last 12 years now.
Wow. I read your career began in IT, but I also read your pet hate is technology. How does that work?
Good question and great research. So I love what technology promises to us, Logan. It's one of the reasons I got really interested in science. Is the promise of the future is very, very exciting. However, technology in the real world often breaks down. And so while I love the promise of technology, in actuality, lots of problems happen when we're using technology.
As a presenter of Futureproof, I've read you have had 1,600 guests and not repeated a topic twice. How do you go about getting guests for Futureproof? Because it must be really hard with that you've done 1,600 topics with guests.
Yeah, so the way I figured that out was we have 3 or 4 guests per episode, and we have been going every single week, which is 52 weeks. And that we've been doing it for 11 years. So it's a lot of guests. But luckily, science is very far reaching. And you could be talking about the science of rockets one day, and then you could be talking about the science of why music is makes you feel happy another day. And then another day, you could be talking about a new cancer therapy. And so there's all these different subjects that you can look at from different angles. And then if you've talked about it 1 year, 3 years later, they may have changed it. So you're talking about something new in that area. So
that's a very logical way of thinking.
Well, that science is all about thinking logically. And so for me, I read the newspapers, and I do a lot of stuff online. Actually, I don't really read the newspapers for science anymore, but I have a brilliant team of a producer, Aidan McKelvey, and researchers, Simon Keane and Garrett and Steve Daunt. And these guys will look out in the world. They will get inspiration from anywhere. When you're in radio and you're a producer or researcher, the important thing to do is to look everywhere for inspiration. So if I was looking at, for example, let me see something interesting on my desk. So this water bottle, right?
Yeah.
If I was looking at this water bottle and I was a radio producer and I had to film my science program tomorrow, the first thing I might say is, well, what if I do a program on what water is, what the chemical compound is of water, and how in different states it does really different things. Water is really weird, actually, Logan. It sounds like a boring subject, but actually water is really
weird.
Water
is kind of weird. Now that you say it, you've literally blew my mind, and we've only got 4 minutes into the interview about water of all things.
Well, think about it. We have water in the world. We have water frozen. We have water in steam. We have water as a liquid, and that doesn't happen with many molecules in the world. And so I could talk about the water, or I could talk about plastic and how plastic is a problem for our oceans and why we should be using much less of these. I could talk a little bit about finding water on other planets, like looking for it in Mars, and what that might mean if there's water. If there's water, there's potential for life. And so researchers and producers would look at one single object on a desk, and they would come up with 50 different science ideas. What about why you need water to run? there's a very interesting subject on how we keep cool, and water is at the center of it. We can sweat water through our skin, and dogs don't sweat, so they have to pant to keep themselves cool, which is why we can keep running, but dogs have to stop after a while. We can keep running, and that's why
Oh,
we're great marathon runners. Dogs can't do a marathon. Did you know that? There you go.
I kind of would be surprised if a dog did a marathon, but I always knew that dogs did pant, but I never thought why did they pant. I never really thought that they didn't sweat. And then I remember I was listening to you anyways on Sunday, I think it was, and you were talking about do birds smell? And it's something that you'd never think about. So
Yeah.
that's another thing that like dogs don't sweat. I actually never knew that.
Yeah.
So thanks again for telling me that.
Sure.
But have you ever had a guest that has stumped you during the episode that it's like he or she has totally boggled you, even though you've researched them and you know exactly what you're talking about?
So one of the most fascinating subjects is the study of time, because time is a really weird one. You don't experience the same time as somebody else. And that sounds like a really strange idea. But when I heard it from Carlo Rovelli, a fantastic physicist, he explained to me that nobody experiences the same moment in time. So if you're looking at your mum, for example, right? And you're saying, Mum, I don't want vegetables for dinner, I want chips. Your mum doesn't experience you saying that at the same time as you do. Because when you say it, it takes a fraction of a second to get the sound over to her ears.
Oh, that's
And,
crazy.
and so she's hearing something that's happened in the past. And if you look in the mirror, you're looking at the past. Because by the time the light has bounced off the mirror and back into your eyes, time has passed. So when you look at yourself, you look at yourself in the past. So there's no such thing as a shared now. There's only a now for you. And that to me was a really weird, but very simply demonstrated part of that interview that I thought I had never thought about time in that way.
Oh my god. Well, you've just stumped me with that. Oh my god, that's crazy. And when I look in the mirror, I'm looking at a younger version of me. That's
Correct.
actually creepy. Is there any music that you're into? Because as you know, Logan Sounds Off, my podcast, is all about music and
Yeah.
books, or as you may know. So I just wondered, you love science and you love working on Newstalk. So is there any music you like?
I love music so much that I learned to DJ, so I could play the music I love to other people when I was 18 years old, and I traveled to parties in my youth, and I'd play records for people, and I really, really loved it. So I like all sorts of music, and I don't like all music. I like all sorts of music. So there's definitely music I don't like, but I love electronic music. I love jazz. I like some pop music, makes me want to dance. I like a lot of hip hop, and there's very rarely a genre I don't like. But I'm a big fan of lots of different types of music. For me, it's about really feeling a connection with the music, and it doesn't matter if it's a jazz tune, or it's Billie Eilish, or it's it's a theme tune from Star Wars. Great music always will get me, and it doesn't matter what the genre is.
That's actually very inspiring for me because I love music and I love lots of genres. Now, not all of them. Some of them I despise, but I love most genres.
What genres do you despise?
Well, like sometimes some rap I don't like because it can sometimes set a bad example to people.
Okay.
Like some people singing like Snoop Dogg or something. I find it kind of inappropriate for some people,
Yeah.
and even adults. It's just I don't really get a good vibe off it. Where stuff like Star Wars always rings a bell in my mind, and it always gives me kind of a sense of memories and stuff, kind of
Yeah.
nostalgia from watching the movies. Where rap, it just it kind of like is just influencing being bad, and I don't really like that. And
Yeah.
so that's why some rap I despise, that I really hate it. And then I've also got a question for you. Could you tell us a bit more about your DJing career? Because I never knew you were a DJ. Never.
Well, I mean, I was a DJ, but I didn't get paid much for it. I DJ'd just for fun, just because I love music. And I often would find a friend, and the two of us would find somewhere to play music where people could come. So it would be a bar or a party or whatever it was. And one of my favorite things in the 90s and early noughties was going into record shops and finding records and talking to people about music and hearing music that no one else had heard before, because it was just
Yeah.
out. And I went to record shops where they had vinyl, and I would leaf through different pieces of vinyl and then stick it on the record player and put the needle down and have a listen and think, ooh, nobody's heard that before. I'm going to bring that. I'm going to play that tomorrow night, and everyone's going to wonder what that song is. So I used to love that. But my brother was a huge influence on my music taste because he was really experimental. He brought such different genres into our house in terms of music at a very young age that I began to love music at the same time I was able to listen.
Wow, like I'm just so jealous right now that you actually were able to flick through vinyl, because nowadays in some record shops they've cut that is just now walls of vinyl, that there's only a couple of vinyl and the rest is DVDs and CDs.
Yeah,
Like Tower Records probably is the only place. The one in Dawson Street is the only place ever where you can get good vinyl,
yeah,
or maybe golden discs. But then again, that's DVDs as well. So it's kind of cool to hear. Like I've talked to lots of people, and they all had. I think a couple of them did have influences from their family. So in
yeah.
your case, your brother, that how did that work for you? Like, what kind? When you said genres that he brought into the house, what kind of genres did he bring in?
So he brought in hip hop. And some of that you would have said would have been inappropriate for adults for sure. Some of the stuff that he brought in the
Yeah,
door. So you'd have to give out to my brother Logan.
Wu Tang
Um,
Clan.
well, Wu-Tang Clan for sure.
Yeah,
Public Enemy. Public Enemy were a good band, and not they weren't
yeah.
inappropriate. NWA were definitely.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So definitely there was some bad in rap bands, but sounded some of their music was great. And
yeah,
they were and they were and some of those bands in those days, Logan, what they were doing is they were trying to draw attention to inequality. Like Public Enemy was a band that was really singing a lot about how black people were treated in America. And that was very powerful to me because it wasn't just music for entertainment. It was music with a purpose. It was music for social change.
yeah,
They wanted to make the world a better place. Now, the way they did it was very provocative and got people talking. And I think people got people thinking about it. But certainly, some people would say that wasn't the right way of doing it. But everybody has their own way of deciding how they interpret
yeah,
music. And then he also brought in lots of weird heavy metal bands. But one tape he brought in, Logan, was an album by a band I'd never heard of, and a band called Guns N' Roses. And at the time, no one had heard of Guns N' Roses. He bought the tape in LA, and it
yeah,
was a bootleg tape of one of their first albums, and he brought it back to Ireland. And in that time, nobody had ever heard of Guns N' Roses, and of course, they went on to be a huge band. But he also played Aerosmith and a bunch of other '80s, rock bands, and
yeah,
some really terrible stuff as well, like glam rock, which was just, I mean, very difficult to understand now. But where men would get dressed up in really tight outfits with really big hair, and they would talk about
yeah.
being tough and mean when really they were nothing like it. It was just a really funny time. The '80s glam rock.
Wow, you've just reminded me. There's an album by a band called Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band. His band's really underestimated. He's a really good band.
Yeah.
But one of the albums was actually painful to listen to. And it's one album that I actually hate. It's called Trout Mask Replica. And the first song on it is 1 minute and 30 seconds, but or something like that, but it's hell. It's like it's not even alternative music, it's horrible. But it's my dad told me, don't listen to that album. And I went, sure, I'll listen to it. I put it on and I nearly blocked my ears. It's mental, but at the same time you've got to laugh at it.
Yeah.
Moving on, where you were saying, I was saying with Logan Sounds Off, with music, but I also do books. Is there any books you like or would recommend for the young and old?
Well, I read a lot of books, and I find it very difficult to recommend just one book. For adults, I am reading Where the Crawdads Sing, and that's a really fantastic book. And it's about a girl who is living in America, and she has to live on her own in the middle of nowhere in the swamps of America, and how she managed to do that. I really enjoyed that. How old are you, Logan?
I am literally 11 in 12 days. The only reason why I know is because my sister is going every day. 13 days till your birthday, and I even forget that it's anywhere near my birthday. So that was yesterday, so now I know it's 12 days.
So,
yeah, I'm nearly 11.
So I'll give you a list of all the books. My son is a big reader, and so I'll give you the list of all. Have you read Skullduggery Pleasant?
I've got 17 of them there. I spent way too much money on them, and once I heard that on the 7th actually 4 days ago, a new one came out.
Oh wow, great!
Yeah, and that's called. Not many people know about it though, because it's called Armageddon Out of Here, Part 2, and some of his books though are amazing. Derek Landy though. After this interview, go to your son, tell him to get all the books and start reading the dedications, because the one on the latest one, or number 15, was the dedication was thanking Iron Man and for someone yeeting herself off a cliff. So they're very weird dedications.
They are.
They're so funny to read.
He's a funny guy. So Casper loved that. He loved the Hunger Games. He loved. Read all of the Alex Rider. He read all of the ones with what's the name of the Olympians? You know that one.
Percy Jackson.
Read all the Percy Jacksons.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah. So they're the ones I'd recommend, because he finished all of those series, but he hard to pull out of a book. My son Casper.
I know. I literally on my bookshelf, I've read pretty much every book there. I'm trying to actually throw books out so I can replace some of them, and I'm also going to the library at the same time. And I'm actually looking at the books going, no, these are too precious, because myself, I love books. I really do. I'd read 2 or 3 in a week, it depends. But I really love books anyways. So it's really nice to hear from someone who has a son about their books.
Yeah.
Now, this is my final question. And this is kind of a weird question, but do you have any questions for me?
Why are you doing a podcast? Why are you interested in doing a podcast?
Well, it was like Christmas, I think, 3 years ago. So my Logan Sounds Off has been going on for 3 years. And I started to get into John Creedon. And I went, whoa, I love to be a DJ when I grow up. So I asked Santa for a microphone, thinking I'd get a dinky little thing and set up a little kind of fake pirate radio station.
Ah,
And then I got a massive studio mic. And I went, okay, I'm really doing this. And I got a tape player, a special tape player. I hooked it up to the mic and I started talking into it. And I recorded tapes. And I really loved that. And then I decided I wanted to set up a mini radio station for YouTube called LKR Radio, as a joke kind of thing. So I set up the channel anyway and I started releasing stuff. And I wasn't that big. I got 20, I still have 20 subscribers on YouTube. So then I just kept making videos until I came to the stage where I wanted to make a podcast for Spotify. So then we set up Spotify with the podcasts, and I started doing podcasts and book reviews and more interviews because my first interview was Keith Walsh, and this is my 10th interview
wow.
in about the last 2 years. My first interview was the 14th February 2020. So in about 2 years and a bit, this is my 10th interview.
Well, you're doing great.
Then we started to get a bit better, especially in the last 3 months with Logan's 5, which I've launched, which is where I pick 5 songs, give it a rating, and then put it up on social media.
Nice.
So now I have, I think, 70 followers on social media, which was a big jump because when I started this, we didn't have social media linked up. And I have 1,100 views on a video that I sent out seeking for people who'd like to chat because it's the summer holidays. I'm sitting here and I want to interview people. So I sent out the video and so far 1,100 people have viewed it.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Well, you have a very fine career in broadcasting ahead of you. And I'll tell you why. It's because people who know what they want to do have a head start on everybody else in the world. And it sounds like you have an idea of what you want to do and you're already doing it. And to be honest, my job isn't very hard. I just need to listen and ask questions to what people say. So it's a great job to work in broadcasting. And
you get paid for sitting on a chair to listen to people. It's amazing.
You do. And it's a wonderful job and I'm very lucky to have it. And I never get bored and I always meet really interesting people and I always have great conversations. And so if you keep doing that and having good conversations and asking great questions like you have today, it won't be very long until you've got your own TV show or your own radio program on national radio, I think. So good luck with it.
Well, thank you. Anyways, it's been very nice talking to you, Johnathan. I've really enjoyed talking about this. The water thing blew my mind. The dog not sweating blew my mind. I will never look at my dog Monty the same way again. I swear I'll go downstairs and I'll see him and I'll just be shivering thinking about the dogs don't sweat. I always thought they did. But anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much, Logan. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Logan Sounds Off. You can follow me on X, Facebook and Instagram at Logan Sounds Off. And don't forget to subscribe and not miss any more cool episodes. Bye guys!